Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Manjin Siu. This is a series on healing curriculum, and this is lesson 4 today. And we're going to continue on a weekly basis until I get to the teaching that is appropriate for all of us to learn. Let's pray. In the name of Jesus, Father, I thank you that we're able to share your word, and I pray, Lord, that tonight's lesson would be useful for our people. In Jesus' name, amen. So last time we talked about our enemy, Satan. And today I want to talk about our battle. What does that mean, our battle? It means that what are we fighting about? What are the things that we need to fight through? Okay. And so this is lesson number 4. You can visit lesson number 3, which is about our enemy. So just a few quick reviews. Our only enemy really is Satan. And this is based on the Bible verse that is Ephesians 6, verse 12. Ephesians 6, verse 12 said that for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Now, Paul here says a number of things about our enemy. But it is, what is the most important thing here is that it is not flesh and blood. Okay, it's not flesh and blood. It is spiritual. It is spirit. And what he talks about, he talks about hierarchies, and they're hierarchies of Satan and his minions, or Satan and the evil spirits. So there are powers in this dark world. And for example, there are territorial demons that govern certain territories. Not only that, there are personal demons that follow us. And this is a totally different study. But today I just want to highlight the fact that our battle is against spiritual forces that are not physical. But here's the thing, even though Satan is spirit, the war is fought through our physical body. Satan and all the demons and all the minions of Satan, they battle through the human agency. It's not like Satan is somewhere out there that attacks us, because the attack usually comes from physical world. Even though Satan is spirit, the war is fought through our physical body, our emotions, our minds. So last time I mentioned this, which is the very big thing here, which is the battle is always between truth and reality. And what I said last time, there's only one truth. Truth is fact-based, F-A-C-T. So you have 2 plus 2 equals 4. That is a fact. Okay, you can take that to the bank. You can do whatever you want with it. That fact does not change. There's truth in every situation. However, there is a reality, and that reality is perception as truth. We all live in our own realities. And as much as our realities align with the truth, then we live in the truth. Jesus says the truth will make you free. The facts will make you free. But then we live in our own realities. For example, some people feel the world is a very unsafe place, right? So it doesn't matter where they live. They could live in the best neighborhood. They could have walls as high that blocks out the world, but still they will always feel that it's unsafe. Or for example, the world, they feel like it's very trusting. They don't lock their doors. They feel like, oh, it's no big deal because, this is a safe world. So our truth and our reality, that's always going to be the battle. Okay. And you can say something to me and I can perceive it very differently. I can perceive something that you tell me, even though it's the truth, I can perceive it as something that is harmful. Or the opposite can be true, meaning to say, I can say something where I tell you is the truth, but in honesty, it's just my reality. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're all talking as a group, And then you say something to me in the group. And all of a sudden I said, are you angry with me? Why did you say that? Hey, your tone is not right. Hey, you're trying to insult me, even though you may not be. And that's the source of battle that happens. We have somebody in our church that was has a prayer partner for 20 some years. And one time she called me and she said, Pastor, I've been a prayer partner with this friend of mine for 20 some years, and maybe we can't do it anymore. I said, what happened? And then she said, well, we were talking about something. And I said, did you see this thing happen? And then the person said, no, I disagree with it, et cetera, et cetera. And then they started to argue. And all of a sudden, now they can't pray. You see how Satan attacks. Not the truth, but Satan always attacks our own perception of the truth. And last time I mentioned about Eve and Adam standing in front of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where they were like, did God say this? Now reality is starting to set in, which is against the truth. They did not follow the truth. They just followed the reality that they believe was the truth, or what they wanted to believe was the truth, that they can be like God. Okay? So, what about spiritual but physical? An example I can give you is Peter. And let me read this text in Matthew 16:21. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day, be raised to life, and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said, this shall never happen to you. But Jesus turned to Peter and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. You see, this is a very good example of Satan being spirit, but the battle is fought with the physical body. So what happened was Jesus is telling the disciples, you know what? I'm going to suffer and die, et cetera, et cetera. Now notice one thing though. Prior to this, in the same chapter, Jesus says, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. What did Jesus say? You are Peter. Flesh and blood did not tell you that, right? Upon this rock I will, and then upon this rock I'll build my church. And then how come later here? Jesus calls him Satan. Okay, so we can look at this passage and say, okay, what happened? Because Jesus was saying something that was very visceral, something that was very, very painful. And Peter had just said, wait a minute, you said a few verses before, the gates of hell will not prevail. You said that, Jesus. And then Jesus says, I'm going to die. And then now Peter says, never, Lord, this shall never happen to you, because it's very contradicting. But see, this was Peter's reality. That was his perception. His perception was, wait, you're talking about a kingdom where the gates of hell cannot prevail. But Jesus was talking about something else. And so his perception, his reality kicked in. No, I'm not going to let you do that. And so then Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Okay. Now, we don't talk like that. We don't tell people, hey, you are Satan. We don't do that. But we do know one thing is that we are driven. We are driven by demonic forces. And this is where I'm going to unpack today, where our battle lies. Excuse me. Last time I said the anatomy of sin. Then where does sin begin? The sin begins from three different places in progression. Number one is our instincts, and this is our body. And what are instincts? These are God-given natural responses. Why do I say they're God-given? Because they're very protective. If you touch a fire, you touch something hot, immediately your hand pulls back. You don't have to think about it. The moment you think about it, you're already done. Now, I've known that there are people who do not have the perception of pain, and that's very dangerous for them. Why? They would touch something and don't feel the sensation of pain and say, well, they will keep touching it. I know somebody that I know here whose son is like that, and they have to be very careful because the instinct doesn't kick in. Okay, when you're driving and somebody cuts you off the road, immediately you slam the brakes. And if you have a baby in the car, immediately you reach out your hand. Why? Where did that come from? Those are instincts that God gave us. But those are also the points where sin happens because our bodies function much faster than our minds, than our emotions. I'll show you an example later. But here's the thing. Number one, I think that Satan attacks the body. The mind is clear. And remember Romans chapter 7. Paul says, I know what is right, but my body keeps doing what is wrong. Okay? So Satan attacks the instincts first. You ever stolen anything? If you've ever stolen anything, you find an opportunity and you look at it and you steal it. Most of the time, you don't sit to think. And what happens? You stole it. Maybe it's a dollar bill. Maybe it's $20. Maybe it's something that you like that was just available for you to take. And you took it. And what happens? First thing, you took it as an instinct. And the second thing, your heart starts to beat. And you start to talk to yourself later. That's exactly what happens. Instinct kicks in, then the emotions come, and then your mind works. Again, mind knows what to do, but the body reacts much faster. Ephesians chapter 2, okay? In the past, you were spiritually dead because of your disobedience and sins. And at that time, you followed the world's evil way. You obeyed the ruler of the spiritual powers in space, the spirit who now controls the people who disobey God. The spirit controls. Actually, all of us were like them and lived according to our natural desires. Natural desires are body functions. When it's hot, we want to go to a place cold. When it's cold, we look for a place which is hot. When it's discomfort, we look for comfort. This is the natural desires of our body. Okay? Whatever suited the wishes of our bodies and minds. Paul was very clear. He put in both there, body and mind. Okay? In our natural condition, we, like everyone else, were destined to suffer God's anger. But God, being rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our transgressions, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. So which parts did Jesus make alive? I believe he makes alive our instincts, our emotions, our mind, and our soul. But it doesn't mean it automatically desires God, okay? Because otherwise, Romans chapter 7, Paul talking about my mind knows what to do, but my body goes the opposite direction. He's not talking about an unbeliever. He's talking about himself. And so these are the battles that we have. Now here in Mark chapter 12, Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only God. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Now, if you were to categorize them, I look at it this way. There's the emotions, there's the soul and the spirit, there's the mind, and there's the instinct. The strength is our instinct, the heart is our emotion, and the soul is also mind as well as our spirit itself. Okay. Now we can go further in Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, and many of us know this Bible verse. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service or service, spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove that what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. For me, this is the clearest way that Paul says we start with the mind, we start with the body, we submit our bodies, excuse me, we submit our bodies as a living sacrifice. It's the first thing we submit. And then the second thing is verse 2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Excuse me. And I mentioned last time, the Christian church always teaches about the mind. We always teach people, we often teach people about the Bible. Memorize scripture so you won't sin. And there are Bible verses that said that your word have I hid in my heart that I won't sin against you. So that'll be like a mind thing. But what I believe is that there's a sequence to it. Very subtle, but very significant. I'll show you later. But what I believe Paul here understands the sequence. The sequence, it begins with submitting our bodies as a living sacrifice. Once we submit our bodies, and then the second thing we submit is our mind. Okay? Body first, and then mind. Most Christian teaching is mind, and we don't deal with the body. And then we get into the trap of Romans chapter 7. I know what is right. I know the law is good, Paul says. But somehow my body keeps going to sin. And for the longest time, I felt defeated because I understand what is right. I understand what is wrong. I understand the law. But then how come I'm still struggling with sin? And it's not any other reason except that my instincts are much faster. And my instinct responds to stimulus that is much faster. I showed you this in our last lesson. Truth versus reality. If you understand that Satan, my only enemy, is Satan, then my husband, my wife, they are not my enemies. My children are not my enemies. My boss is not my enemy. My friend is not my enemy. Church leaders, members are not my enemies. Those who criticize me are not my enemies. Those who hurt me are not my enemies. If I recognize that I only have one enemy, I realize my enemy is spiritual. Okay, so how do we look at this? The way you look at this is to remember that we are being driven by our reality. Okay, so I'm always driven by my perception. You are driven by my perception. And if your perception is wrong, your conclusion will be wrong. Okay, if you and I are talking and I don't trust you, that's my perception of who you are. Nothing you'll do will change it because it will be that feeling. It'll be that feeling of no, you're trying to lie to me. And my reality is always stronger than the truth. See? So a lot of times people come to me as a pastor and they say, my wife is this, my wife is that, my husband is this, my husband is that. Now, I want to let you know my training, my master's is in marriage and family therapy. Okay, not counseling, but formal therapy, which means to say, when I sit with a couple, I would say the husband would come in and say, "Oh, you know what? My wife did this, did this, did this." And my wife would say, "No, no, 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 not me. He did it." And then so they would go back and forth. And I would try to listen to both of them. Then I'll try to work with them. Oh, did you hear your wife say this? Did you hear your husband say this? That was my training. Now, I did not do it as a formal profession. because I was studying also to be a pastor at that time. But it was for me a very good training. But let me tell you, probably in the last 8 or 10 years, I stopped doing couples counseling. And I'll tell you why. Why? Because Satan, as the enemy, will wind his way into the relationship. And perception, reality, will fight against the truth. Okay. So it's always he said, she said. And you know what? It was so hard because she said, no, no, no. What you did is the truth. You said you hated me. You said you regret this marriage, and that is the truth. No, sometimes it's just instinct. Oh, yes, we don't get along anyway, so we might as well just divorce. Yeah, that was said, but now that has become the truth. And so about 10 years ago, I stopped doing couples counseling. Here's what I do individual counseling. And I will talk to the person who comes to me. I don't have to meet with the husband. I don't have to meet with the wife. But here's how I work with them. I try to find out what is reality, what is the truth. Okay. If the person I'm talking to has the truth and the spouse is the one that has this reality or perception, then I work to help the husband stay with the truth, but also how to respond to somebody's perception. If I'm talking to the person and that person is the one living in his or her own perceptions or reality, and there's a truth out there, then I have to point that out to that person. So I don't need couples to work with a couple. I work with the person who was on their second marriage. The first wife died, and he was so satisfied with his first marriage. He thought, I love this marriage. I'm going to do it again. And he did it again, and he married somebody who was divorced. It was a miserable, miserable time. I worked with him for 2, 3 years, meeting weekly. It's all only, everything is about understanding what is truth and understanding what is reality. What is his reality? What is her reality? So he would say, my wife said this, blah, blah, blah. And I say, that's perception. That's not the truth. And so we work around to find out how to deal with that. And it was maybe 9 years ago now. I still see him once in a while. And then I would say, how's your marriage? And he says, it's doing actually better. And I'll tell you, never talk to the wife. I never talk to the wife. Okay. Because again, it's helping people with the truth. Once they understand the truth will set them free. But also understand that Satan is the one that is warping our perception of reality or of the truth. Satan is the one that is twisting our reality to the point where the truth gets really skewed. And so what do? Satan is my enemy, and I put the words there, practice, practice, practice. And we'll look at that in a bit. So the Bible advocates training, not trying. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I try to remember that Satan is my enemy. Yes, you try to remember that, but let me tell you, when it happens, you will forget. Okay. I said, hey, don't answer back. Okay. You tell a person, don't answer back. When the other person is attacking you, don't answer back, which is what Jesus says. You don't have to answer back. But then it's, oh, I can't. I'm sorry. I didn't have enough time to think through. Oh, yeah, Pastor, you reminded me that Satan's my enemy, but that I just have to answer. The problem is not trying. The problem is training. I think I got this from Rick Warren. So look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Verse 11. But you, Timothy, are a man of God. So flee from all these evil things. Pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight for the true faith. Hold tightly to the eternal life to which God has called you, which you have declared so well before many witnesses. I want you to notice the words that I highlighted. Those are all physical effort words. Run, pursue, fight. Those are all physical words. And frankly, I think that we as Christians do a disservice to our to the people we disciple if we just keep having them memorize Bible verse without physically incorporating them or incorporating some of these principles into their spiritual life. And it's other passages talk about this, training, not trying, in 2 Timothy 2:22. Run from anything that stimulates youthful lust. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts. So Paul says, run, pursue. Okay, these are all physical activity words. They're not mind words. And that presupposes that there's movement, that there's things that you have to move around in order to be able to get to that point. There's further. 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you not know that all the runners in a stadium compete, but only one receives the prize? So run to win. Each competitor must exercise self-control in everything. They do it to receive a perishable crown, but we an imperishable one. So I do not run uncertainly or box like one who hits only air. Instead, I subdue my body and make it my slave, so that after preaching to others, I myself will not be disquieted. Slow down and look at all the words. Okay? Paul is talking not about trying, but about training. But what do we train? You can train the mind, but again, instincts are much faster than your mind. Instincts are even faster than your emotions. Okay, so here again, it's about runners, competition, exercising self-control, running, subduing the body, boxing, all physical activities and physical terms. Not done yet. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except something common to mankind. And God is faithful, so he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. Now, I want you to watch this statement because Paul is talking about a way of escape. Now, we always think about this way of escape being spiritual. I don't believe it's spiritual. I believe it is physical because of the other Bible verses. Run, flee, pursue, subdue, box, train. Do you remember the story of Joseph? When Joseph was serving at Potiphar's wife's house, Genesis tells us that Potiphar's wife was trying to seduce him day and night, day and night. The problem was he could not go into the house because Joseph was the manager of the whole household. So one day he was in his room and she tried to grab a hold of his robe and pulled it, yanked it out from him, and he left naked. He had to run away. He could not talk his way out of the situation. He just had to leave the situation. You see? So this is very important for us to understand. So what does the way of escape mean? It means a physical way to get out. This is what we tell people. We tell people if you want to learn, you have to avoid certain things that will trigger. Okay. Now, today in the internet, it's just so many temptation that it's really hard. So for example, even on a screen, on a browser screen, on the right side, on the left side, there will be some, this is for men now, some sexy ladies, and oh, guess what this movie star is wearing, a see-through dress, whatever. And you look at it and there's that temptation to click on it. Now, if you want to fight temptation, you don't just mentally keep saying no, 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 no. You got to do something physically. And sometimes it's just to stop the computer and leave the room. Go do something else. And this is where I like what Rick Warren says a lot. Don't sit in the front of a computer and keep saying, I can fight this, I can fight this, I can fight this. He said, flee, stand up and do something else, and then come back later. Or sometimes what I would do, because I know I can't control myself, is I take a piece of paper and block that portion of the computer. And you say, "Oh, you're so prude." Yes, no, I'm not prude. I'm just being honest because I can't. I know I cannot handle it. And why does Paul use the word "the way of escape"? Because only physically understanding this can you fight Satan. Now, one time I guess I asked all of you, and if you've never been asked, you go to a hotel, it's a new hotel, you just checked into the hotel, you unlock the door, you go inside, and you close the door behind you. Now, if you look behind the door, what do you see? Most people said, do not disturb sign, all that kind of stuff. No. One thing most people don't actually see is the escape route to telling you you are here and here are the fire escapes. None of us read it. Why don't we read it? Because we never figure we will need it. But I guarantee you, when the hotel alarm sounds, you start to scramble. You start to scramble looking for where the escapes are. A few years ago, in our church system, in our Arcadia Church, we in our system, First Evangelical Church Association, we have a church that's in a condominium in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it was a condo, and there was a fire. And so the pastor and the church member there, it was all smoke. So they opened the door and they had to crawl and they had to remember which way was the fire escape. Because you cannot panic. You cannot afford to panic when it is an emergency. Why? Because your instincts will kick in. You'll just start thrashing, you'll start whatever. Think about when a person is drowning. When you're drowning, you're going to start kicking and screaming. My grandfather, who was a medical doctor in Fuzhou, China, but he was also a missionary because he was doing translation for missionaries. And it was the 1930s, 1930s or 40s, and the boat capsized. He was with the evangelist. The evangelist died, and he was saving people. And when he was saving people, he kept telling, and people heard this, he kept telling people, don't move because when you're relaxed, if you don't relax, I can't save you. And you know what? He was pulled underneath and he died. And they found his body 2 days later downstream. If you've ever watched some movies where lifesavers, the ones that are, the guards at the beaches, and they're trying to save someone and that person is thrashing, you know what they do? They would just knock them out because instincts will kick in and you will start panicking. The way of escape is to stop you from panicking. Two examples. One example I mentioned to you before. This was my niece's husband. He's a driver for the Secret Service, and he drives president. He told me he's driven four U.S. presidents. But he tells me the night before, he has to drive around the city wherever he was, and he had to memorize every single street. Why? He has to memorize what's the fastest way to get to the airport, but what if there was an attack? What are the alternate routes to the airport? What's the fastest way to the hospital in case the president is shot? What are the alternative ways? Which streets are closed? Which streets are narrow? Which streets are wide? He told me he had to drive the whole night to memorize it for 1 hour of the president being in that city. And I asked him why. He says, you know what? I cannot afford to panic. And this is why many Christians fail. We don't have an escape route. I'll give you a second example. Whenever I go to a new building, this is me. Whenever I go to the building, you know what the first thing I look for in a new building? Some people think I'm silly. I look for the restroom. Okay. I look for the restroom, and it doesn't matter if I'm speaking, I'm a guest, or I'm in a party, it doesn't matter. Every building I go to, I say, can you tell me what the restroom is? And I actually walk to the restroom and then go to wherever I'm supposed to be. You know why? Again, if there's an emergency, I don't have to panic. And if I don't know where the restrooms are, and I say, I'm gonna wait till the speaker finishes. And once I get out, once the speaker finishes, I get out, and then the restroom is very far down the hall, then I'm surprised. Then it's not good for me. But when I go into a building, where's the restroom? When I visit any church, I ask for the restroom because then I know I don't have to panic. So this verse is very important. And the importance is in the following. God will provide a way of escape. But you know what many people tell me when they sin? Oh, I have no option. I can't escape it. I just sinned. I just have no, 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 no. If you have planned a way, and by the way, ways of escapes are planned. You cannot panic. Okay? If you were going to steal from any building, you have to know all the way to escape. Same thing when you will need the bathroom. Same thing when you will need when there's a fire. And by the way, same thing for a spiritual life, for a good spiritual life. So what are we talking about? If you begin to know your way of escape, you're beginning to develop something called muscle memory. Let me read this. When a movement is repeated over time, a long-term muscle memory is created for that task, eventually allowing it to be performed without conscious effort. This process decreases the need for attention and creates maximum efficiency within the motor and memory systems. Examples of muscle memory are found in many everyday activities that become automatic and improve with practice, such as riding a bicycle, typing on a keyboard, typing in a PIN number, playing a musical instrument, martial arts. Those of you who have learned piano when you were growing up or still play the piano, when you start, you don't play a song, you play scales. Why do you play scales? Because your fingers are not used to it. And you have to create muscle memory for your fingers to be able to be agile enough that you can layer on the next step. Okay? Playing a guitar is the same thing. Typing on a keyboard. I remember when I was in the Philippines, there are vocational schools, and one summer I went for a typing class. And if you're in a typing class, you do, ASDF to practice your finger. Like on a piano, the same thing for a computer keyboard. You just have to keep practicing, practicing, practicing. And by the way, during the practice, it's all mindless because it's not accomplishing anything but just to develop your muscle memory. And muscle memory is going to be very important. You know why? It counters your instinct. So when I say earlier, I say Satan is my enemy. And last session, I said to you that you have to post it all over your house, is because you have to keep memorizing and memorizing and memorize until it becomes second nature to you. Why? Because then it will slow down your body so that your mind can catch up. Okay. Remember, I said our instincts are the fastest, emotions are next, mind is the last, based on Romans chapter 1, 24, 26, 28. God gave them over to acts of sin. God gave them over to their lust, which is emotion, and God gave them over to the depravity of mind. Many people who are sinning think they're doing the right thing. You know why? Because their mind convince their bodies that their bodies are okay. That's not what God says, okay? Because our battle is spiritual. Now, I'm going to show you an example of this, and this is Steph Curry. If you don't know who Steph Curry is, he plays for the Golden State Warriors. And a I want to show you a clip. Let me stop for now. Okay, hold on. Let me do something first. This one is a video of one of his trainings. Okay. He's training for instinct. He's training his mind to be able to control his body. Okay. He's training his mind to be able to control his body. Okay. So I'll show you a short clip and then I'm gonna go and explain it. Okay. So listen carefully to what is shown here or what.
This is Brandon Payne with Accelerate Basketball, Stephen Curry's personal skills and performance coach. Today we're going to take a look at some of the drills we do in Steph's workouts that deal with ball handling. These are things that are easy to replicate at home, but things that have a really big impact on how we work on a day-to-day basis with Stephen. These are things just simple with tennis balls, two balls with a partner. You can do them at home. You can do them as a part of your shooting workout, or you can do them as a part of your warm-up getting ready to shoot. Let's take a look at them. The first drill here is going to be something, it's the base tennis ball drill series that we go through, which is something where he's just tossing or bouncing the tennis ball with himself, not using a wall and not using a partner. So in this one, we're going to follow the same principles that we talked about with our...
Okay, let me explain what's happening here. Okay, so you see him with his left hand dribbling the ball, but he's not looking at the ball. Now, if you and I today were to walk into a basketball game or a basketball court, they say, "Hey, why don't you guys join the basketball game?" You would walk in and then you would start to dribble. But if you and I, who are not trained basketball players, we would be looking, our eyes would be looking at the ball. And that's the only thing we will see. But when we look at the ball, somebody can easily steal the ball. Now, he is a very seasoned basketball player, but he's dribbling with his left hand, but his eyes are not looking at his left hand. His eyes are looking at something else. His eyes are looking at the tennis ball and using his other hand to catch the ball. So what he's doing two things at the same time. Why? Because one has to be muscle memory so that it creates time for the other, for the mind to be able to function. So this is a drill. This is not a game. This is the drill. Okay, let's show a little more.
balance series last week. We want to make sure he's got a tight core. We want to make sure he's breathing and he's keeping the basketball at the same speed the entire time. We don't want the basketball to slow down or speed up based on the speed of the tennis ball. So as long as he's keeping the basketball consistent, he's doing these things correctly.
So his mind is doing two things. His hand is doing one, his mind is doing something else. His hand is doing instinct in order to free his mind to be able to see what is not part of the basketball that he's dribbling. So he can see what's out there. Now let's look at the next one.
Then we're going to progress. We're going to go off the wall. So this is just a simple between the legs where he's tossing the ball off the wall, catching it with the opposite hand. Again, same principles. We're trying to breathe, tight core, making sure the ball is moving quickly and smoothly. Then we progress further. So we're going to go now. So each hand has its own assignment. One hand is crossing over, one hand is going between the legs. So we're going to progressively get more difficult as we go through these drills, as we get closer to time to shoot. So this one again, he's got a crossover and a between the legs, and you can put any two moves together to create any combination you want. But it just be simple in terms of catching, tossing, and breathing. Don't get too complicated as you're getting started with these drills.
Remember, the mind is slower than the body. And so the body will do its own work. But what he's doing is he's making the body do something that's already natural, but then learning to free his mind so that he can look at what's happening in the court. If you and I are dribbling, we are only looking at our ball. We have no time for anything else because our mind is slower than our body.
Then we're going to progress further. So we go from here to what we call double moves. So the next drill you're going to see is where he's going to toss the ball off the wall, and he's actually going to go behind his back twice and catch it. So it's a double behind the back, and then he catches it. So this is a big step up from the individual moves that we just watched. So this is something that's going to take some time to work up to, things that are going to take you a lot of reps. Just make sure you have a few tennis balls around, because as these things get away from you, you don't want to get caught in the middle of your workout chasing tennis balls down.
So if you see, he's dribbling behind his back now. That's increasing the level of difficulty. Now that again is becoming instinct, so that he can free his mind to react much faster. The mind needs to catch up with our instincts in order for us to be able to learn. Now, this is the last part of this video, and there's multiple videos on his different exercises.
Then we'll go to partner two ball drills. Again, we're going to stay pretty simple here, just with the between the legs, but he's got a partner here flashing numbers at him, forcing him to keep his eyes up, forcing him to make a decision on what the number he's seeing is, which is going to replicate things that he sees in games. So again, these are drills you can go through at home, just if you've got a parent or a sibling.
What is so interesting about that is that you see what he just said, is that it replicates what happens in the basketball court. Okay, this is drill. This is drill. It is not the real game, but it has to be part of his learning so that his mind can catch up. Because in a real game, there is no time. There is no time for him to realize what is happening, because the game is happening so fast. Okay. Now, Steph Curry has trained himself so well that if there's only 4 seconds left in the game and they're inbounding, everybody knows the ball is going to go to him. And so he doesn't have time to dribble. He doesn't have time to think about his shot. How far is the shot? Is it 30 feet? Is it 25 feet? How high should he shoot the ball? Because there's a 7-footer guarding him. No, he doesn't have time to think of any of that. He only has time to think about how to free himself in order to be able to look have a good look. We call that have a good look at the basket and be able to shoot it. Everything else has to be instinct. When I found the formula, the secret for this, it revolutionized my Christian life. I realized Romans chapter 7. I will sin very quickly because that's just my nature. My nature, I will just sin very quickly. But you know what? If I start to train my body, then I realize that my body can slow down so that my mind can catch up. What are we developing? We're developing habit, a usual way of behaving, something that a person does often in a regular and repeated way. See that? Regular, repeated, that's what we call habit. A behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition or physiologic exposure that shows itself in regularity or increased facility of performance. Now it's showing up regularly without us having to think about it. An acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. Do you see that? Muscle memory. What is now becoming involuntary, so that to free your mind to be able to function in a good way. So, what is the drill that I told you last time? Satan is my enemy. And so, today, almost exclusively, when I teach people, when I disciple people, I'm talking about Satan is my enemy. Why? Because our battle is against Satan. Our battle is not against flesh and blood. Again, your spouse is not your enemy. Your children are not your enemies. Your boss is not your enemy. Even your enemy is not your enemy. Why? Because they are being driven by Satan. And when Satan attacks and you're not ready, you will resort to instinct. You'll resort to defending yourself. You'll resort to different kinds of battles. But if you begin to understand that Satan is my enemy, then you develop the habit. So how do you develop the habit? Let me tell you. You type up Satan is my enemy many different ways in a piece of paper, and you cut them out and you put it all over the place, your house. Why do you do that? You do that because you want to create muscle memory. Okay. Now, in my house here in Los Angeles, many years ago, I have a treadmill. I purchased a treadmill because I wanted to exercise. And you know what? I found the following, that the moment I wake up, and I do that in the morning, when I wake up, I have like a 2 or 3 second window, seconds, time. I have a 2 or 3 second time window. I've noticed when I wake up, immediately I wake up, I said, "Oh, I didn't have enough sleep last night. Oh, today's going to be a busy day." You know what? Immediately I don't use a treadmill. Because again, my body has now been convinced by my mind that that I don't exercise. So what do I do now? Okay, I mean, after that, when I learned this, what did I do? I put my gym short beside my bed. So once I wake up, I don't think about it. I just sit. I sit on my bed. I stand up and I change into my gym shorts. My socks, athletic socks, are right by my bed. Because that window in 2, 3 seconds, my mind's going to say, "No, you don't, you deserve to sleep longer. Oh, you deserve to rest. Oh, you've been really busy. Oh, you have a headache. Oh, no." I learned that. And that's where I learned to apply it to my Christian life. Satan is my enemy. Look for an escape route. Look for a way of escape. Always look for a way of escape. God always provides a way of escape. See? But it's like we don't want to work on it. That's why we get sucked in. Next time, I want to talk about layers of emotion. We talk about the body today. Last week, we talked about our enemy. Last time, we talked about our enemy. Today, we talk about our body and how to fight our battle. Next time, we will look at layers of emotions. Why? Because all of these, we can be hurt by it. All of these can potentially cause us to sin. Okay? I wish you all well, and until next time.